Welcome to Reaching Out. I'm Gregory Floyd, President, Local 237 Teamsters, and we're very pleased to have with us today our guest, Ted Kennedy Jr., President of the Marwood Group and son of the late Senator Ted Kennedy. He was regarded as the lion in the Senate and also the nation, and you're just like following his footsteps in another direction. You're sort of like the people's advocate.
Well, I think it would be very hard to walk exactly in my father's footsteps, because he was an incredible human being, and I could never compare myself with my dad and the many accomplishments he had. I'm trying to make a contribution in my own way, as I mentioned to you, not just in the area of healthcare, which is of course an area that he really loved and felt passionate about, but also in my work as a civil rights activist for people with disabilities. And I'm on the board of an organization called AAPD, the American Association of Persons with Disabilities, and we're the largest cross-disability membership organization in the country. We intervene in litigation and cases all over the country, test cases, much like the NAACP did, years ago in trying to expand the rights and opportunities for people of color. Now, we've seen the women's movement, the gay rights movement, and now really the disability rights movement is kind of the last, great, movements of inclusion, and it's been terrific. And my father was also really an inspiration to me, and in that work as well. What I learned in my family is that we need to be involved in things, that we just can't sit back, complain about the problems, hope that somebody else tackles the issues of, poverty or the environment or whatever the issue is in our own communities. We were always taught we were always asked at the dinner table, what have you done for somebody else this week? And that was really the measure by which we were judged in my family growing up. And so I know I have a tall order to try to live up to, my father's expectation and his legacy. But, I think that all of us in my family, whether it's the Shrivers with their work in the Special Olympics, yes, or, my cousin Bobby, who is well known here in New York
Sure.
City for his work, protecting the water supply and other issues of environmental importance.
Let's talk about the healthcare, the passage of healthcare, and what that meant to your father's legacy, because this was really something that he fought for all of his
life,
his public life. Yes.
Well, my father believed that healthcare was a right and not a privilege for the few who could afford to pay their health care bills. And he thought that as a country, we really needed to provide a basic level of coverage for everybody. And I do grieve the fact that he wasn't alive to see that, President Obama, passed this amazing legislation. But I think he did know when he was there on the podium when President Obama was inaugurated. I think he knew that the moment had finally come and that he was going to, realize his dream of health care for all Americans. So I think we've got a lot of work to do, Greg. I'm not going to lie to you, but I think we're on our way, and I think this president has done an amazing job.
Your father was on the podium when President Barack Obama was sworn in. And your father played a very, very significant role, to say the least, in President Obama being elected. Yeah. I really believe, and I'm going to say it publicly, I really believe that your father knew that President Obama was going to keep his promise. And I believe President Obama stuck with this for a whole year because he wanted to keep his promise to your father.
Yeah.
And he took a lot of political heat over this. He stuck with this issue because this was on your father's agenda, and he just wanted to make sure
I think
he got it passed.
I think, obviously my dad and he spoke a lot about it and had the chance to do so as they campaigned with one another. But I think also President Obama shared the same political philosophy as my dad, and I think that this was, he really wanted to accomplish healthcare reform himself, and knew it was not just a healthcare issue; it was part of the economic survivability issue for our country. So, but my dad really, he knew that President Obama had the capability of being the great leader that he is.
Your father was right.
People with disabilities are still some of the most isolated and segregated members of our society, through no fault of their own. There's still a tremendous amount of stigma against people with disabilities. It just like there's racism and sexism,
yes,
and other, we all have, these prejudices to some degree, and our goal is to try to become a more inclusive society. And when you see in New York, the curb cuts and the elevators, yes, and the ramp, that's an important,
sure,
and it's not just people with disabilities, it's bicycle riders,
yes,
and for delivery people, and what we're trying to do is make it a more architecturally inclusive, okay, so people can get around and not be prisoners in their own homes.
Could we implore you to sort of thinking about in the future running for something?
Well, I've thought about politics. I grew up in politics, yes, and everybody in my family, at one point or another, has thought about politics. So, it's something that I've kept in the back of my mind. I haven't had it in the front of my mind just because I've been trying to raise my two kids, sure, and that's my most important job right now, is to be a father to my kids. And but maybe in 3-4 years or something, there may be an opportunity for me to get into. I don't know whether it's going to be elective office. I'm not ruling it out. Okay. I think it would be great. I still think that politics is an incredible way to make a difference in this world.
Joining us now is a member of Teamsters Local 237. He is a caretaker P working for the New York City Housing Authority, Antwaun Hedgemond. Antwaun, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Greg. How you doing?
Antwaun, tell us what a caretaker P does.
Well, a caretaker P is a plasterer helper. He tends to the plasterer. He assists the plasterer in every aspect of reconstructing walls in the New York City Housing Authority.
Let me ask you, before you started working for the Housing Authority, before you got into the military, I hear that there was an interesting, I wouldn't say career, but you did some interesting things. You were in the Golden Gloves, weren't you?
Well, while I was in the military and after I got out of the military, I was in the Golden Gloves, yes. I started fighting at 5 years old, though. I was fighting, but I ain't really do tournaments and stuff like that until I got into the military.
Have you ever thought about sort of doing on the side, training some of the young kids in NYCHA, or maybe starting a boxing clinic?
Yes, I was trying to find a gym, to open up where me and my father could, train some of the guys in the housing authority, or who doesn't, is less fortunate. We try to find a gym where we could train them and trying to give them another way out, but it's kind of hard finding a place.
I'm probably going to work on that with you, because I know of at least 3 other people who train whose children are boxers, but that's all the time we have for this segment of Reaching Out, and I'm sorry, time goes by really quickly. I'm Gregory Floyd, and yes, I'm Gregory Floyd, and this is Reaching Out. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.